is the new ProRock XD60. So we first showed it actually last year at SEMA when it was really just a fledgling prototype. Well, now we're actually shipping them today. And so the XD60 is really everything I wanted to do to the ProRock 60, but didn't get around to. So now we've incorporated all the changes that we've come up with and improvements we wanted to make over the years into this new embodiment of this housing. One of the things we've kept and not hurt at all is the ground clearance. We still have the best ground clearance in the business, bar none. There's other housings out there that look similar, but they have features that like webs underneath and ribs underneath that they have to put there in order to give their housing rigidity because of the patented design that we have in the ProRock. So we've retained obviously our patented design, so we get the best strength and the best ground clearance all in one package. Another big change is we took a lot of weight out of the housing. We redesigned it. The original ProRock was designed back in the day when we did a lot of leaf spring applications. Well, we do almost no leaf spring applications anymore, so we really optimized it for the applications that we're doing today. The Jeep JK is one very popular application that's really important to us. So we also optimized the housing, the top shape of it, so that we could drive it higher up into the car for more wheel travel in the upward direction. We didn't want it to crash into oil pans, whether you have a 3.8, 3.6, or a Hemi. So we wanted to make sure that we could protect the package so you can drive this axle almost as high as you can a stock axle, within 3/4 of an inch of the original stops. So it gives you a lot of up travel even though you have a big axle. Another important feature is the diff cover has taken on a much bigger role in the housing rigidity. The diff cover now is mounted with an O-ring seal instead of silicone, and the reason for that is we needed hard metal-to-metal contact in order to get a real rigid connection between the cover and the housing. So the O-ring also has an advantage in that it's real easy now to take a cover off, wipe it with a rag, put it back on, it seals right up. You don't have to worry about cleaning the gasket surfaces as much. So it's a convenience factor, but we really did it mostly for the strength, not for that reason. The bolts that we're using to hold the cover on are 7/16 20 bolts compared to the 5/16 bolts that we used to have. The reason for that is we can torque those bolts over 80 foot-pounds. So we can get a lot of clamping force between the cover and the housing, which boxes in the whole structure, and the cover is much more integral part of the overall housing strength and structure than the old covers were, and certainly a lot more than any other axle has. Everybody else is just using a diff cover to close up the front and keep the oil in. In ours, it's actually a structural member of the entire housing. We also use the Super 60 ring gear, so it's a 10.1 inch ring gear, which is larger than the 9 3/4 inch ring gear of the old ProRock. We also have made a number of changes to the interior. Now some of these are very subtle. A lay person may not notice them, but we do. And so there's a lot of extra material that's been very carefully placed in order to give the housing more rigidity, even without the cover in place. The other thing we did was we went to new bearing packages. So one of the things that limits the rigidity, or one of the things that limits gear strength is housing rigidity. So I already talked about how we improved housing rigidity in the main housing. We improved housing rigidity with the front diff cover. Well, the other area we spent a lot of time on is the bearings, because the bearings, even if they only move a half a thou here or a thou there, that's movement that starts to stack up and gives ring gear deflection, which takes the pattern out of its optimal position and takes away strength. And so we've gone to much larger inner pinion bearings and carrier bearings in the XD60 to maintain all the structural integrity that we built into the pumpkin itself. The other thing you'll notice is that it has the largest tube diameter of any housing in the industry. It's 3 3/4 inch in diameter. That allows us to make the wall thickness thinner to also take out more weight. The housing we're showing here at SEMA has our new 1550 wheel end, and it has got an aluminum knuckle with a military grade alloy casting. That is not going to be available until summer of next year, but we're already shipping the XDs today with the current wheel end, the Pro 60 wheel end that everybody knows and loves and has done so well for us in the past. So eventually the new wheel end will be out, and that's going to also allow us to take more weight out and also increase more strength. So these are the different kinds of cover bolts that are out there in the field today. This is a typical grade 5 3/8 16 cap screw or hex head cap screw that's used on just about every Dana 60 out there. This is the grade 9 5/16 screw that we've used on the early ProRock 60. This is the new screw that we're using on the ProRock XD. you notice it's a lot bigger screw. This is what gives us a lot of clamping force, because we can tighten this up a lot more, and now that we have metal-to-metal contact, we can keep the case a lot more rigid. We relocated them, so that way they are not as susceptible to being ground away with rocks. The cover protects them more, and also the placement of the screws are not going to be in contact with the rocks nearly as much. These are a couple inner pinion bearings. So this inner pinion bearing is a typical inner pinion bearing like you see on any Dana 60 out there today. This is the inner pinion bearing that we use on the XD60. So you can see there's quite a bit of difference there. Now this is important because it just keeps that pinion from moving at the position where it gets the most stress. So this is a critical improvement to the rigidity and gear strength that we have in the XD60. This is a carrier bearing of a typical Dana 60, and this is the typical carrier bearing we use for ProRock 80. This carrier bearing is now standard equipment on an XD60. Now there are some limitations. Not every differential out there will use this bearing, but we have selectable lockers. The Auburn Ectet Max, for example, and others will be able to use this bearing very easily. This bearing is an even larger bearing, and this is going to be designed to work with this new ARB that we've collaborated with Air Locker on. You'll notice that at the top, the trunnion is much, much thicker than a standard Dana 60 trunnion would be. The problem that we've always had when we go to 40 spline shafts is that these trunnions are so thin, they cone out, they wear, the bearings start to creep and wear away at them, then you have play. Basically the bearing is flopping around on the end of the trunnion. So we wanted a beefier trunnion, so the 40 spline applications, there's a lot more stress in there, so we wanted to mitigate that with a lot more material. So this is an exclusive item for Dynatrac that we've collaborated with ARB Air Locker on. So this is a great piece. ARB Air Locker is a big part of our business. It's a great product, and we're very pleased to be working with them on that.